From the Generation 1 comics, to the decades of animated series, to the blockbuster live-action movies, this is From Cybertron and Beyond, with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to the second episode of From Cybertron and Beyond, a Transformers vidcast and podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, the Emerald Enthusiast himself, Donnie. Donnie, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Transformers fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy. It's the Emerald Enthusiast, and we're back to take you back to Cybertron, specifically 2007. It's Transformers, the first live-action movie.
Now, Donnie, if you were one of the Autobots, which one would you be?
If I were an Autobot, the obvious answer is, Optimus is my favorite, like a lot of people.
So that's who you'd go with?
But at the same time, I'm no leader, so I wouldn't mind being maybe Ultra Magnus instead.
All right. Well, okay, so I'll give you that. Next time we do the show, I'll call you Ultra Magnus or my Ultra Magnus. I'm not going to be pompous and call myself Optimus Prime, even though, I'm the host of this show. I'm not going to do that. And the reason is I'm going to call myself Bumblebee. You want to know why? Because Bumblebee had Megan Fox sitting in him. He had the Rosie Huntington, whatever her name is, sitting in him. He had Haley Steinfeld sitting in him. So I'm calling myself Bumblebee because that's the luckiest SOB from Cybertron. And that's what I'm rolling with. Anyway, so you can tell where this podcast is going to go today. We are going back to 2007. I've got a prop with me, and you'll know why shortly. So before we get into all that, Donnie, take us back to 2007 and give me your sort of frame of mind going into this movie. Like, what were your previewing thoughts?
Oh, well, if you watch the first episode of this podcast, I had been a Transformers fan since 1984, and to see this finally come to the big screen, honestly, unless the movie was, just an absolute steaming pile of poop, I was going to like it. I was excited. Went to the theater by myself. My wife wasn't interested, and I didn't have a problem with that.
Uh-huh.
But I remember being in the theater and hearing Peter Cullen's voice and hearing the effects of the transformations. Honestly, the movie had me right there. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about the things I did and didn't like about it, but it was so exciting to sit in the theater, and the 12-year-old, 13-year-old version of me who loved this franchise was just overjoyed, even though by that time I was a man in a man of, well into my 30s, in definitely a man's body. But I felt like a kid that day. It was awesome.
So you were in Shazam mode from in that sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's it. So for me, I was excited. I think right from when you start seeing the trailers and you hear that transformation sound, that effect. I mean, right there they had me, right, and then. Yeah. Just visually, I thought when I saw the trailers, it looked fantastic. So I was like, oh yeah, I don't know how they're doing this, but it looks great. And you got to remember, 2007. What do we have? We were in a space where we had, 2 years prior, we had Batman Begins. We'd had Superman Returns. We were just about to get, if my dates are correct, we were just about to get Spider-Man 3. So even though we had visually effects heavy movies,
we were still a year away from the MCU at that point, so we weren't used to seeing these kind of effects yet.
Yeah, I mean, we had visual effects heavy movies, but to do things on this scale, we hadn't seen it yet, like you're talking about. So I was very intrigued by the look of them, at least in the trailers and all the promotion material. And then, look, back then, 2007, how old was I? How long ago was 2007, Donnie? I'm
How
asking
long
you.
ago was
Yeah.
2016 years?
So I was 23. And so I was already sold on the movie, but what really had me sold was when I saw Megan Fox. I'm like, all right, yeah. I mean, this could be. Look, folks. Here's how much I enjoy watching Megan Fox. This will tell you everything you need to know. I watch Jonah Hex. The end. That tells you all you need to know. I mean,
Jonah Hex wasn't that bad. That's a different podcast, but
right.
we'll get there.
It wasn't that great. It wasn't that bad. But you like I didn't know it was a DC character at the time, so it's not like I was going because it was DC, which I often do. In some cases, much to my own detriment. See Catwoman, but or don't see it if you haven't. Don't worry about it. But so I wasn't going for the DC factor of that movie. It was Megan Fox is in. All right, I'm there. Anyway, that's not here nor there. So yeah, I was in. I was sold, and I went with a bunch of a group of buddies to that one, and we all came out, and by the end of the movie, we were all mimicking the Transformer song. I mean, a bunch of 20-year-olds walking around the street, making that sound.
Well, don't deprive us. Go ahead and do it.
I can't do it anymore. I mean, that's why I had you put the effect in the intro. You see, that's what. See, okay.
There you go, Barry.
Oh, it's yeah.
And by that I mean Horowitz, not Allen.
I was gonna say Whippleman, but that's a different guy, and I don't want to be that guy. But anyway, so yeah, I was in, and I was primed for it, pun intended. All right, so Donnie, so let's get into the movie. Give us a brief synopsis of what happens in this movie.
As Bret Hart would say, a brief synopsis.
Yeah.
Well, it starts.
And then tell us how much Bret Hart hates Goldberg.
Exactly. He probably blames Goldberg for the Decepticons invasion.
Probably.
The Allspark landed here because Bill Goldberg forgot to tell the government.
He speared it out of Cybertron. He speared Cybertron and then knocked the Allspark.
Yeah. So the basic premise to this is that the Autobots and the Decepticons are both here looking for the Allspark, and of course we get the adventures of Sam Witwicky, and played by Shia LaBeouf, who is the main character. And many, many human side characters. I thought for the most part they were interesting. There were a couple that I didn't find that great. And Adam's going to kick me off the podcast probably because I'm going to talk about one of them. But yeah, so that's the main thing is that, once again, the war between the Autobots and the Decepticons comes to Earth, and humanity's kind of caught in the middle.
Yeah, and it was, look, it was straightforward. It wasn't hard to follow. And now to all the cinephiles on Twitter, that's such a basic plot. Yeah, look, folks, it's Transformers. It doesn't need to be,
Shakespeare,
a scientific dissertation, right?
Right.
It's Transformers.
Right. Although you know what, there was some talk about about like technology in this that I thought was really interesting.
I think it was, but the highbrow folks on Twitter. Oh no, this is too. It's Transformers, folks.
Right. Right.
It doesn't need to be brain surgery. So yeah. So let's. Where do you want to go first? You take the lead.
Well, I really loved the way that this was introduced with a little bit of backstory about Cybertron.
And of course, we're talking about it over the voiceover.
The voiceover by Peter Cullen. Yeah. That's a voice that my generation, when we hear Peter Cullen, we're instantly, it's like transfixed. I'm
probably going to go to hell for saying this, but I can imagine that's how Moses felt when he supposedly spoke to God in the bush. Can you imagine if Peter Cullen did the voice of God in a Moses movie? That would be
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I'd watch it.
I don't think it's quite to that level, but I will say this: it's like it's kind of like with the Thundercats. When Lion-O goes ho, and I know this is a different podcast, but all the Thundercats are like this. That's how it feels to like kids of my generation. We hear that voice, and it's like, huh? What? So,
Now that you said that, I want a Thundercats live action movie, but anyway, go on.
oh, I'm surprised we haven't had one yet. But
Yeah, it's a
anyway,
shame. Yeah. Different podcast.
so we get again. The plot involves Sam Witwicky, who is a teenager who wants a car. He kind of acts like a human chihuahua throughout the movie. Seriously, that guy was so twitchy and sweaty throughout the whole movie, even when he was just like in his house.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying he was a bad character. I actually did like the character, but I mean, through the whole thing, I was like, man, you need to cut back on the caffeine. Just ease up a little bit.
Like he almost purposely stuttered.
Yeah.
Like he was doing what Bubba Ray Dudley was, because Bubba Ray Dudley's stutter was fake.
Yeah.
And so was Shia LaBeouf. So I kept now every time I watch it, I'm like, hey, there's Bubba Ray. We just
I did like a lot of the side characters. One of the ones I want to bring up, Captain Lennox, wanting to get home to his baby.
Josh Duhamel, yeah.
Yeah, that I thought was, I mean, for me, again, as a man who was a little bit older watching this, I like that a lot more than like the side plot of, Sam, falling in love with Michaela. That didn't do things for me necessarily. I didn't really like that. I thought that was kind of forced, but there were a lot of things that, like that, the government agencies kind of conflicting with one another, the soldiers and, Sector 7, that kind of stuff. I thought that added intrigue to, the entire plot here. It wasn't just like a kid's cartoon come to life. There was a lot of that, and that's what we wanted. But it was more sophisticated in a lot of ways than people will give it credit for.
Right. What I liked about it was, so you're right. First of all, the brief voiceover gives you enough. It gives you the bare bones. If you're a random person that never watched or heard of Transformers before and you just saw the trailers, that looks like a cool action movie. That voiceover really sets you up with the basics so that you're not like, what the hell's going on here? Like right. You've got your bearings, and now you can go. I think there's two things that having the human character of Sam Witwicky, I think, is important, because making this story about a boy in his car, there is a innate relatability there, where when a kid becomes 16 years old, one of the primary focuses is getting your license and getting a car. Mm-hmm. The other primary focus for most boys, some girls too, is a girlfriend.
Right, exactly.
So you had that there, there. But I think,
and there's also a parallel with Buster Witwicky from the comics. Yeah, remember how in his friendship with Bumblebee, which is something that I thought this movie did correctly.
Yeah.
Even though it was, a tweaked version of this character. Right. Yeah. Liked it.
But the boy in his car aspect, it grounds it. It gives it a charm, right? That I think allows the average layperson who doesn't know anything about Transformers, it hooks them. That hook. And having Amblin and Steven Spielberg as a producer, that aspect feels very much his kind of influence,
right,
to it. The other thing that I liked was the intertwining between the Witwicky family and the Autobots and Decepticons, so that it was what was it, Sam's great grandfather?
Yes, that was Archibald Witwicky.
Yeah, Archibald, which is a name that you don't hear so often anymore. Yeah. That connection, that pre-existing connection, that prehistory, if you will, I think adds another layer to the story, which I really liked. Look, I mean, I know you said the relationship didn't do anything for you. The most non-believable aspect of it, right, is that Shia LaBeouf could actually convince Megan Fox to kiss him. Like, that's the most look, you give me giant robots that can go from car to robot form,
right?
I can suspend disbelief, right? You tell me that back in the day that Hoover created this Sector 7 thing to hide the existence of the Decepticons and the Autobots. Yeah, I'll roll with it. You can finagle that into actual history all you want, and I'll roll with it. I believe it. I can suspend disbelief. You tell me that Megan Fox is going to go now. Look, that guy, her boyfriend, her pre-boyfriend was a douchebag, and I'm
Right.
glad she left him. He's a clown. So good for her. Get rid of him. It's a shame that Optimus didn't squish it, step on him and squish him. That's what I would have liked, but I digress. So she left him. That's great, but I don't know. I just don't. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. I look. If he can get her, that's a hook for me. Because hey, if I can believe he can get her, hey, there's hope for any of us, right? Any a guy that's like Sam Witwicky. But I just couldn't see it. It was like, look, I don't buy it. I don't buy that she look at you twice.
Another thing, and again, I'm not saying that I am a fan of Megan Fox. I think she does good work.
Yeah.
I didn't know how old she was until after the movie, but when she was playing a teenager, I was like, really? And I think she was like 20 or 21.
Yeah, which wasn't that far off. Yeah,
in reality, but she didn't look like a teenager. She looked like a younger, like more world weary adult. And so I thought that they could have written a different character for her.
Right. Now a couple of things I want to say because I have to, because I brought the prop. So there's the scene where, actually we can't get there yet. One of the other things early on in the film that I liked was the father-son, if you bring me $2,000 and you get in A's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll get you a car.
Right.
And so he finagles his way to an A with his last professor, who, let's be honest, no professor is just gonna give you an A because he feels sorry for you. It just doesn't happen. That's movie making magic, is what that is. So, anyway, he gets the A's, right? So his dad's like, "Oh, I got a surprise for you." He takes it to car dealerships, and he pulls it to a Porsche dealership.
Yeah.
And Sam Witwicky, Shia LaBeouf is stuttering his way through a sentence, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're getting me a Porsche? I can't believe this." And the father starts having it because you're right, because I'm not going to get a Porsche. I love that the father cracked me up. I love, what, the parents. I love the parents in this movie.
Likewise, I thought those were they were comedic, but it was an organic kind of comedy. They didn't feel forced. I also if there were a character that I would have loved to see more of, and obviously we know why this didn't happen, Bobby Bolivier, that was played by Bernie Mac. The one who was the car dealer.
The car dealership.
It was like Uncle Bobby B, baby.
Yeah, I loved it. It was so hilarious. And he's like, "Oh, I'm trustworthy." He goes, "Look, I got my family here. That's my mammy." And he's like, "Hey, mammy," and she gives him the finger. I was dying.
And he was like, "I'll bust your head with a rock." if I had one, it was.
Oh my God, it was so funny. But
something like that, yeah.
In those sequences, what I liked about it was there was that nod to the original animated series where there's the beat up, what is the Camaro that is Bumblebee, the beat up one,
right?
And then beside it is Volkswagen, what is it, the Beetle?
Yeah, it's a Beetle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when
at least I think I'm not an expert on cars, and I don't want to give anybody the impression that I am. So
when his father says, "Oh, we can't, I'm not paying that kind of money for that car. Well, what about this bug, right?" And so they're looking at it, and then the Bumblebee, the car that is Bumblebee at the time, smacks the VW. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
And a nice nod to the cartoon. I thought that was
yeah.
And
then emits a sound to like explode all of the windows.
To
make sure that the sale happened. So that was creative. That was funny. That's and Bobby B was like $4,000 right now.
So that was a great funny character. I liked it. It was great humor.
Yeah.
So now we get to the part where they're at that party in the wood by the lake, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
And douchebag over there is making fun of Shia LaBeouf. Then Megan Fox kind of quiets that down and says, "Oh, let's go." And he won't let her drive his Jeep or whatever the hell he's driving, because God forbid the listen. If I got a girlfriend that looks like that and she wants to drive the car, drive the goddamn car. I don't care. Like, you think I care? Take the car here. Anyway, he doesn't let her take the car. She starts walking, and then Sam ditches his butt and says, "Get out of the car." It's my only chance to be.
Exactly. He totally threw his friend. He was like, no.
Full disclosure, that would be me.
I need to make sure I'm never in a car with you then.
Donnie, I love you, brother, but I'll tell you right now, if I see Megan Fox walking down the street and you come for a visit, and if for some godforsaken reason she's here, right, and you're here for a visit, we're driving around, I better not even have to say anything. You should know I'm gonna get out of the car and meet him wherever we're going.
So you're gonna leave an old man walking around in Canada by himself?
No, I'm gonna be very polite.
Okay.
I'm gonna install Google Maps on your phone.
Oh, thanks.
And so you could just find your way, and I'll meet you there.
Okay. Thank you.
But anyway, the whole time, see, folks, I'm polite. The whole time that I'm like, that would be me. I got no shame in that scene in the car. I could relate to Sam Witwicky, because I would have done everything he did in that moment. And they do strike up a decent conversation, a somewhat believable conversation about, through all the innuendo and pretext. And she's talking about how she really can't stand the way her boyfriend is.
Yeah.
And Sam brings at the point, if he's such a jerk, then why are you with him? You're more than that. You're more than a trophy case for him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was there was some good stuff there.
I will say this, and like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the whole, especially the boyfriend and oh, he's a jerk or whatever. But when she was like, I don't know, I like guys with washboard abs and big arms, and Sam was like, you mean like
yeah.
It was like,
I was doing the exact same thing. Yeah, that would have been me.
It was like Schwarzenegger talking that one time on the set of Terminator 2. He's like, he told Linda Hamilton, he's like, you got to learn to use your muscles like this. Somebody asks you where the bathroom is, you tell them it's over there.
That's a good Arnold impersonation.
It's all right.
I will say too, there's the part where the car breaks down.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, pop the hood," right? And then it's shot very with lots of innuendo, lots of for a teenage or early 20s guy watching that scene, it's very effective. But when she talks about her father being good with cars and being somewhat of a mechanic,
mm-hmm.
Well, let me just say, my father's an actual mechanic, and I can say with the utmost confidence that there ain't no mechanic that works for my dad that looks like Megan Fox. Because if there was, I'd sleep at the shop. So,
what would be funny is if you did find, a woman who looked like Michaela, and she turned out to be your sister.
That would not be. But then I would be mad at my own DNA. But no, Donnie, you know what happened after this movie? I went home and I showed my dad. I'm like, Dad, why don't you have a mechanic that looks like this? And I showed him the picture. And he just shook his head and laughed and walked away. Anyway, so yeah, I just want to get this out of the way right now. I probably have it more than once. In case you haven't wondered by our conversation so far, Megan Fox is on the list. And to clarify, Earth 7. Why? Because this movie came out in 2007. It's as simple as that.
Makes sense to me. So we should get a couple things out of the way here.
And when she leaves the car and she's walking away, the funny part was when the Bumblebee turns the station to "Baby Come Back." Oh, that was funny.
Yeah. So the various Decepticons here: Brawl, Bone Crusher, Barricade, Scropanok. I really like the way Scropanok looked. Frenzy, Blackout, Starscream, and of course Megatron. So those are the various Decepticons that were featured here, and we'll talk about the Autobots in a little while. But right. So that's kind of the point that we start to get the development here of not only the friendship between Sam and Bumblebee, but obviously Sam and Michaela eventually getting together. So
yeah. And we see a couple of times, as that starts to form, we see, Bumblebee sort of takes off on his own.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's Sam's dad bails him out of jail, and that's the point where Bumblebee goes off on his own, and Sam is freaked out because he thinks somebody stole the car, then he thinks that the car is stalking him. So it was, like I said, Shia LaBeouf gave a very high energy performance here, and he was an interesting character, even if, you may not be a fan of that much, energy coming from an actor. I thought it worked for the character.
Because he was a teenager, I was supposed to be a teenager, and and all that, it worked. But as we got on to the second and third film, it's like, okay, you're in college now, calm yourself down.
Yeah. Exactly.
Relax. Like you know what it reminded me of with the twitches and the stuttering? It was kind of like a Jesse Eisenbergish Lex Luthor type.
Lex Luthor, yeah, just like from Batman versus Superman. A lot of similarities there.
Which is not a good comparison in my opinion.
Exactly. That was not one of my favorite characters in Batman versus Superman. So, yeah.
But
so eventually, go ahead, sir.
No, go on.
Eventually, we see Sam and Michaela rendezvous with the Autobots, being Ratchet, Ironhide, Jazz, Bumblebee, and of course, Optimus Prime.
I think, now that you brought this up, that first reveal when they're in the car form and then they all transform in front of Sam and Michaela, that's got to be one of the most effective first reveals. I'll say it, you can call me ridiculous or not, in movie history. I thought it was great.
You know what? Regardless of my criticisms of this film, when Optimus transformed and we heard, we are autonomous robotic organisms from the planet Cybertron. And I was like, oh my goodness. At that point, I'm sold. I don't care what else happens to see that in live action, because I'm a fan. At that point, I'm sold. And I was in for the entire franchise.
It just looks so good. Like it was just so...
And it sounded good.
It was grandiose. It was epic. And you're right, the sound plays a big part because you have to have that transforming,
Yeah.
Watching this 2007 film last night, it's the visual effects still hold up.
Definitely. I mean, this was, in a lot of ways, this was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, people talk about, it's dumb and there's a bunch of explosions. Well, yes, but for the things that this franchise achieved, there's a lot that it doesn't get credit for.
But Donnie, again, the people that complain about, explosions, action. Let me preface this again. It's a Transformers movie. That's what you want in a Transformers movie, folks. I don't want Schindler's List. I don't want To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't want what's that one with Matthew McConaughey and A Time to Kill.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Shawshank Redemption. When I'm going to see a Transformers film, I want to see them transform. I want to see explosions. I want to see them fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a simple man.
And we got a lot of that. And I thought that I really liked the kind of collateral damage that we got in a lot of these fights. I mean, you saw, there was so much destruction happening around the battles between the Autobots and the Decepticons. That added a layer of realism. If this, something like this actually happened, number one, the military, we get one Transformer and the military is outmatched. If they don't have greater numbers and the element of surprise, if they don't have prep time, then, again, they are at a severe disadvantage. And they showed the power of the Transformers and us getting caught in the middle. Yeah.
You absolutely see the disadvantage, right? Mm-hmm. Because you've got two branches of the government like so out of sorts by this arrival and this reveal that they're arguing with each other because they can't coordinate,
Yeah.
And they're so out of their element.
Mm-hmm. Now, a character I did like, Maggie Madsen. She's one of the technicians that figures out the Decepticon. Here you go.
No, finish it.
Figures out the infiltration signal of the Decepticons, and she detects Frenzy hacking into the files, and convinces the Pentagon to take down the defense network, which stops Frenzy's download. So that's an important, story point here.
Now she's played by Rachel something or other, right? What is the character's name? The actress's name?
That would be Rachel Taylor.
Right. Who was in Jessica Jones for the Marvel thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachel Taylor, ladies and gentlemen, is in fact on the list.
Which Earth is she from?
I haven't exactly thought that through, but I'll get back to you on that. 616 for the Marvel reference. There we go.
Well, there you go.
I can think on the fly, folks. Not about things that matter, but about this stuff. Go ahead, continue.
So another story point we get here is that the Autobots and Sam, they have to locate Archibald's glasses.
Which he thinks he has.
Right, exactly.
Which he does have at one point.
Yes, which is the key, which he actually tries to hawk early on in the movie because he wants a car. That was funny. Didn't exactly make Sam likable because I was like, wait a minute, these are like family heirlooms and you want to, hawk those for a car? Come on now.
Yeah. And that,
but it was comedic.
That eBay profile of Ladies Man,
Ladies Man 217 or whatever.
He could never live that down because everybody made fun of him.
And who puts that kind of profile pic on eBay?
Yeah,
like the hair going in every direction.
and see, and you expect me to believe that Megan Fox is going to give him more than one look? I'm sorry. But anyway, so they go back to the house, which is the whole house scene where Michaela and Sam are trying to find these glasses indoors.
Yeah.
And the Transformers are just making a mess of the garden and the area of the house is hilarious. Because we've heard the father so many times, respect the path,
right.
Your mother's garden, blah, 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 blah. I give you the whole thing. And they just unintentionally destroyed that area. And what's funny is, so Michaela and Sam are searching. They can't find it. And then one or several of the Transformers hits the power lines.
Yeah.
Knocks out the power.
Yeah. And
so the parents, get a flashlight. They think it's an earthquake because the house is shaking, all that jazz. And so the parents go in Sam's room and he's very, don't come in here. And the mother's like, oh, we heard, who are you talking to? And he's like, myself, I'm talking to you guys. And he's getting off. And he goes, oh, we heard noises. We heard screaming. We heard you're sweating. And she says to him, and when I heard this both in the theater and rewatching it now, I've spit my water out. Sam, were you masturbating? And he's like, no. And he's like, oh, we don't have to call it that if that makes you uncomfortable. We can call it Sam's happy time. And he's like,
right, exactly.
And
everything she said after that point just made it worse.
Yeah, and then because Michaela was hiding, so she reveals herself.
Yeah.
And the mother's like, oh, she's very pretty, and the father, I love the father, just casually gives her the fist bump.
He's like, yeah. He's like, that's man. My boy.
The parents were killing me in this movie. Oh man. And it was funny because I think it was a couple scenes before when one of them is a Ratchet that says the boy's testosterone levels suggest that he wants to mate with this
to mate with the female, and I was like, oh, laid it right out on the table, poor Sam.
But then at the house, which listen, who can blame him? Anyway, second, the other part that made me laugh was when the dog, I think it was around this part when they're at the house.
Mojo, yes.
The Mojo, yeah. Pees on Ratchet, right? And Ratchet's
like, you have a vermin problem or something like that.
this vermin is lubricating on me. I'm going to exterminate. And he's like, no, put away the gun. Put away the gun. So just stuff
I'm
like
sorry.
that was hilarious.
The scene where Bumblebee peed on Seymour Simmons
Yeah, we'll
was.
get there. Yeah.
we'll talk about that in a minute.
Speaking of, this is the same. Once they find the glasses, the Sector 7 comes in.
Yes.
And
they're kind of like the Men in Black.
Right, exactly. And I look, John Turturro was playing this for the fun of it. Like, you could tell he was having a ball and just chewing up scenery. But it was hilarious. You can't deny that he was hilarious. Yeah. And I know people get bent out of shape over the humor, but I think it worked in these scenes.
Not all. Yes, there were a few things but yeah, I thought that was fine. I really loved when Optimus, when Seymour had Michaela and Sam, and Optimus and the Autobots come to his aid.
Yeah.
And Optimus, rips the car apart and is like, "You should not have taken it." Or what did he say? Taking the children was a bad move.
Yeah. And the whole time where they have that whole sort of, let's call it a chase scene. Yeah. Where they have to rescue the.
Yeah, I love the chase scene between Bumblebee and Barricade.
Yeah. Oh, that was a little bit before.
Yeah, but that's one of my favorite. I'm not a huge chase scene fan. I'm not a chase scene fan. I'm not somebody.
No, but that was borderline chase scene.
But that was cool. Match. That was awesome.
Yeah, because it was like a WWE pay-per-view mixed with a car chase scene.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So
and that was great. But yeah, so when Sector 7 is trying to recapture the kids and Bumblebee, they have these cables to tie up Bumblebee and they're shocking him, right? And Sam is distraught, Michaela's flustered, and at this point the Transformers look like they're losing this particular battle.
The Autobots.
The Autobots, yes, and so as that's happening, and you're seeing Sam's emotion for what's happening to Bumblebee, that only works because of the connection between Sam, the boy in his car, that angle. Because if you don't have that angle, if this was just Transformers, Autobots versus Decepticons with the government chasing both of them, then that capture of Bumblebee doesn't hold nearly as much weight, because even though we as fans are predisposed to cartoon, you can't, if you don't have that connection between Sam and Bumblebee, you can't fault the Sector 7 agents for how they're reacting, because what you're dealing with are two alien groups kicking the crap out of each other, and that fight could end up eradicating the human race. So how can you look negatively on Sector 7 if there is no connection between Sam and Bumblebee? If that isn't pre-established, then the scene of Bumblebee getting captured doesn't have an emotional effect.
And again, I think that was a nod to the comics too, because one of the major storylines out of the first 4 issues of Transformers was Sparkplug and Buster saving Bumblebee's life.
Yeah.
And so I did like that you kind of got the same spirit of the source material there.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to bring up that you kind of mentioned is, the Autobots questioning Optimus Prime's leadership when he refused to go basically rescue Bumblebee because he didn't want to hurt humans.
Yeah.
That's Optimus Prime's personality, though. The one thing that he finds unacceptable, which actually led to his death in the comics, is that to hurt bystanders, civilians of any race, shade, or creed, or whatever, that's unacceptable to the Autobot code.
And that's why
innocent sentient beings can't get hurt.
Right. And that's why that's why I gravitate towards characters like He-Man, Superman, and Optimus Prime, because of that moral code that they have. And that the way they value life, right?
Yeah, and those are kind of, your most best of the, the best of the best heroes, your most moral heroes.
Those are the top tier. Those are the top tier. And contrary to the certain groups' beliefs, that's why I prefer when Batman doesn't kill people, because his whole point is to prevent what happened to him happening to other people. So if he's running around killing people, how is he any better than the people he's fighting? Anyway,
well, that's a good point. That's a different podcast, though.
Yeah, but
that's the DC Comics Chronicles, which is available right here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe.
Pat yourself on the back for that one, Donnie. That was good. But so no. But I understood in those moments, in that contrast of ideologies between Optimus and the other Autobots. I understand both sides. He's like, from all the other Autobots, they're like, why? All they want to do is capture us. Why are we protecting them? Let's go get Bumblebee and screw the humans. I get that perspective, because if you arrive and all these people are doing is persecuting you, like they haven't made an attempt. Neither Sector 7, none of Sector 7 has made an attempt to talk things through with Optimus or the Autobots. It's just bag and tag him and put him on ice and let's experiment on him. That's the Sector 7. So from most of the Autobots perspective, why are we protecting these people?
And right? What was Optimus's answer when they were the Autobots were like, why are we protecting these people? He was like, and the Autobots were like, look how primitive they are. And Optimus is like, but we weren't any different at one time.
Yeah.
Speaking of Transformers. And then he says, my favorite line in the film, and I knew it was coming, but I just loved it when he was like, freedom is the right of all sentient beings. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Gorgeous line. I loved it.
Absolutely.
I could listen to Peter Cullen all day.
Oh yeah, I'd like him to read a book on tape.
Do you know that he talked about the creation of the voice of Optimus Prime, and he originally was going to kind of go with kind of the robust, kind of egotistical voice of characters in the 80s. A lot of protagonists were your Schwarzeneggers and your Stallones and people like that. And his brother, who was actually a soldier, said, if you're going to do this voice for kids, have the courage to be gentle. And so that's why, his brother influenced the voice and the creation of Optimus's personality. And you get that. Optimus is a warrior, but he's also a gentle soul.
Yeah, you get both sides of it. You get that when he needs to be, he's robust and forceful. But when he also needs to be, it's a calming, reassuring voice. And I love it. We haven't talked about it, but I like the idea that Bumblebee's vocal cords were damaged in a battle on Cybertron, and he has to use the radio to communicate. And I like that little hook. I thought it was cool.
I like that for the first movie. I didn't like the fact that it went on and on.
It should have evolved beyond that. Yeah, for sure. But for this first movie, I think it works. Yeah.
So eventually the movie shifts to Mission City, and we see characters Glenn, Maggie, Keller, and Simmons. They manage to contact the Air Force and direct F-22s to Mission City, and eventually we get the big battle between the Decepticons and the Autobots, including Optimus Prime, arriving to confront Megatron.
The whole third act is essentially Top Gun on steroids.
And that's what you want. Again, and I know people are just like, oh, Michael Bay is nothing but explosions. I get that point of view. But if there was ever a director made for the third act of a film, it was this one.
Yeah, visually, you cannot fault Michael Bay. He is fantastic at the visuals. And like I said, I think, when you see the Autobot versus Decepticons mixed with the soldiers, the ground soldiers in there, mixed with the jets, the fighter jets, all that mixed in is just a visual feast. And the fact that they made us wait for the Optimus versus Megatron battle till the third act, I think it was worth the wait because man, it was cool. I mean, they made Megatron look strong for 3/4 of that fight, beating the crap out of Optimus.
Mm-hmm. Which I will say this, I thought that was a little overdone. I thought it should have been a little bit more even. But
it should have been, but
yeah.
I think you had to make Bumblebee. Bumblebee. You had to make sure Megatron.
Well, the villain has to present a threat, and when he woke up from cryostasis,
because
that was amazing.
And because he's been off screen for 3/4 of the film, I think they overdid. They slightly made it one-sided because of that, because they want to make up for the lack of him in the first 3/4 of the movie. But I get your point as well. But Optimus, when he gets that, I know the reference, he has that sort of Hulk up moment where he where he gets his second wind and just then he starts taking over.
Yeah.
And when he creates with his arm the sword.
The sword is on. I know not everybody liked it, but I thought it was a great visual.
I'm like, that was badass. And look, I know he didn't have it in the cartoon. But when something is badass and looks that cool, I don't care. Because you know what? I like people with swords.
Yeah.
I like Zorro. I like He-Man. I like Lionel. And you know what all three of those have?
Swords.
Yeah. So you want to give Optimus a sword?
And I like Blade because Blade has a sword too.
And Blade, that's another one. I keep forgetting about poor Blade. I forgot he was a comic character for years. But anyway, Blade too. Just heroes with swords are cooler. All right, it's the way it is. Green Lantern has a ring that can make a sword.
Yes.
So by that virtue, that's why he's cool. He's cool.
This has got to be the first time that we've had a podcast that you mentioned Green Lantern before I did.
I know. What's wrong with you? You feeling okay? What's wrong with you?
March Madness.
Since I did it. Wait.
There you go.
So yeah, I the only thing, the action for 99% of the action in this film looked great. One small issue I had with the fight scenes. Sometimes the camera was too in tight. So that it was hard to make out, okay, who's fighting who? There were certain points where it was like, you got to pull back.
And I thought the design of the Decepticons in particular made that problem worse because
they all looked alike.
They had these kind of overly complicated kind of insectile designs in some cases, whereas the Autobots, they had different kinds of colors and shapes. You knew who they were. With the Decepticons, you had to stop for a minute and go, hey, that's why I like Scropanok. Scropanok looked like, a scorpion. So you knew exactly who that was at all times. So
so that's my only criticism. But the third act was great. And then, Sam once again saving Optimus.
Right.
Because Optimus had said, look, if it comes to it, insert the Allspark into my chest and I'll sacrifice myself to save
everyone. And of course, Sam doesn't want to do that.
So he instead he takes the Allspark, shines it up real nice, turns it sideways, and sticks it in Megatron's chest. And then he thought I was going somewhere else with that. But no. And then that's
he asked Megatron, he's like, what's your name again? And he's like, I'm Megatron. It doesn't matter what your name is.
So that's how they defeat Megatron. We think he's dead, and he's dropped into the ocean, or some specific part of the ocean where supposedly he'll just, not be found, or it's too deep for him to be found, and he'll just rust away and rot away.
Yeah, obviously that wasn't going to work.
When the box office came in and this movie exploded, we're like, that ain't gonna last.
Right.
And then at the end, everybody gets their happy ending, and I don't mean that in Sam's mom's kind of vernacular of it.
Right.
Although Sam probably got that too.
Well, let's keep it PG-13.
And good for him, because damn, I never thought I'd be jealous of Shia LaBeouf, and then this movie happened, and I was like, you lucky son of a you know who. Anyway, and no offense to his mother, his actual mother. But yeah, so they all have their happy ending. We see Lennox. He gets home with his wife and his kid.
Yes.
We see again Sam and Michaela making out on top of Bumblebee. Which, if you're Bumblebee, it's like, guys, I mean, get a room. Like, this is a little weird.
I also want to say,
knowing Bumblebee is a sentient robot,
yeah,
and doing any sort of
Bumblebee's probably like, you know what? I'm not meant for this now.
Doing any sort of horizontal activity on top of Bumblebee, it just ain't right. Like, look, just get a room. And what were you gonna say?
Two people I want to call out: John Voight as the defense secretary, and Anthony Anderson as Glenn Whitman in this.
Oh, he was funny.
He was hilarious.
when they're in the interrogation room, they bring in the donuts.
The donuts.
You gotta eat all the donuts, so it makes it like you can't break them. When they come in there, don't say nothing. Don't give them anything. Right. As soon as they come in, it was her.
She did it. Sold her out right away.
I loved it. It was hilarious.
And of course, this ends with Optimus Prime. His big speech about calling all the Autobots in the stars. We're waiting and we are here.
That gave me chills. Anytime Peter Cullen talks, I just get chills. Like, you know, why that guy isn't doing cameo? Maybe he is. He should be doing cameos, because I'd get one. If it wasn't too out of this world expensive, but some of them are. Yeah, that ending was just great. And then, look, people make fun of it now, but I liked the soundtrack to this film. Yes, it had a lot of Linkin Park, but it worked. I liked it.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, that, for me wasn't, any kind of, detriment. By the way, Mojo's real name was Chester the Chihuahua.
by the way, too, it should be funny. It should be known that because I talked about like the actual songs that appear in the movie, but it should be shouted out that Steve Jablonsky's musical score was phenomenal. It was great. I love it. I love this score.
I'm not somebody who walks away a lot of times remembering the score, but the way that it worked out, it in no way did it take me out of the illusion, put it that way.
Yeah, it was great.
And the way that it ended, the music at the end, I thought was very appropriate for, the movie wrapping up. So I liked it.
Kudos to Steve Jablonsky's score. I have to shout that out. Is there anything else specifically that you want to mention, or we can go ahead and rate this?
Also liked Robert Epps. That was played by Tyrese Gibson. I like how they got people to play soldiers who actually look like soldiers.
Yeah.
Very believable.
This is one of Tyrese's better performances.
Mm-hmm. He did a great job, yeah.
Not to be confused with the Fast and the Furious nonsense. You can tell what I think of that franchise just by that comment.
I've actually never seen Fast and the Furious because, again, I'm not a car movie guy.
Don't waste your time.
I'll have to, at least the one with The Rock. I know he's not your favorite person, but...
Well, no, okay. I'm going to clear this up right now. As a performer, I like The Rock. As a WWE superstar, I love The Rock. Stuff we're finding out as a businessman, Hollywood type, behind the scenes, that's the part about The Rock that I don't like, because the outward appearance is it's all about the fans. And then you find out, wait a minute, no, it's not actually about the fans. It's about Dwayne Johnson and furthering his.
Yeah, see, I like it. He gave me the XFL, which I didn't need to watch more sports, but again, I got sucked in.
In that aspect, I like it, but it just like some of the Hollywood like activities behind the scenes, and the way he did what he did with DC. Like, as much as I enjoyed Black Adam, side tangent real quick. As much as I enjoyed Black Adam, and I love the Hawkman. I love the what's his name, Dr. Helmet, Dr. Fate.
Dr. Fate.
Dr. Fate, yeah. Loved him. my issue is, if you look at that movie, which we've reviewed already, we liked it, but there's a reason why the villain is so, he's powerful, but only to a point to show that, oh, look, we need Black Adam to come in here. And once he comes in, it's like, and the whole thing about not having Shazam versus Black Adam in favor of this vaunted, oh, Superman's got to fight Black Adam. He basically screwed 3 franchises in one motion with that kind of behind the scenes finagling. Because if they would have
let's not get too far off on a tangent now.
Right. So that's why. But as a performer, I like The Rock, especially as a WWE superstar, and I enjoyed Black Adam. It wasn't the best movie in the world, but I enjoyed it. So anybody that thinks otherwise, take a seat. But anyway, yeah.
So any other lines you want to talk about before we rate this?
One of the things that I do want to say is that it's funny what watching a 2007 movie in 2023 will do, because as soon as John Turturro comes on screen, I'm like, there's Carmine Falco. Like, that's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
Right? But no, I just, like, anytime Peter Cullen delivered one of his classic lines, like the one for me was during the fight with Megatron, it was like, one shall stand and one shall...
he said, at the end of this day, one shall stand, one shall fall.
That gives this movie at least a 6 out of 10 just for that.
See, and that's what I mean about being a fan. You know, there are some people, it's like, they'll tell you, I'm a huge fan, but if I don't get A, B, C, D, and E, and all, all of this out of the movie, then I'm going to say that's horrendous and nobody should see it. To me, I went in and I was like, you give me Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
You give me his right personality against Megatron. Give me Bumblebee, being the kid's favorite, and I'm going to like this.
There are certain check marks that if you hit, I'm going to be a little bit more forgiving. Like, and if there's stuff that I don't like about a movie that I say I like, I do that. I don't blindly say, oh my God, I love this, and there's nothing wrong with it. And that's what you should be able to do. But it shouldn't be so rigid that, unless it's exactly like the comic or the cartoon, then I can't support it.
Well, in your case, it was probably already a 4 or 5 out of 10 just because it was Megan Fox, right?
Well, I think Megan Fox got it to a 4.
Okay,
right?
Okay.
And then as long as Optimus was portrayed well, that would get another 1 full point guaranteed, right? So it was already at a high, it was already at a what would be a 5 out of 10? It was already at 50%. Just by virtue of having those things, but I overall, once that line came out, accompanied with all the other ones, I was like, I'm a total shill for this. Give me more. At the time, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So I think we can go ahead and rate it.
Yeah.
So give it a letter grade, Donnie.
Letter grade. Oh, I'm gonna give it a B.
Yeah.
I thought it did a lot more right than it did wrong.
I'm going to give this one. This is one of my favorite of the series, so I'm going to give it an A-. I won't specifically rank them because we're going to do that as we review them, so I'm not going to give that away. But this was one of my favorites, so for that I give it an A-. That brings our Transformers 2007 live-action movie review to a close.
You know what? I'd like to close by saying the actual closing line of this.
Sure.
I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message to any surviving Autobots taking refuge among the stars. We are here. We are waiting.
And with that, Donnie, let's share our social media handles so that if the viewers and listeners want to interact and talk about Transformers with us, they can.
You can find me on Twitter and YouTube as the Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk comics. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk Transformers. Let's talk Green Lantern.
Indeed. And if you want to talk to me about all those things, DC, Marvel, wrestling, Turtles, or Teenage Mutant Ninja variety, I mean, don't ask me about actual Turtles because I know nothing about Turtles. Power Rangers and anything else, You can at Adam_LeafSfan on Twitter. We have the Twitter handle for the podcast network itself, which is at MMNPDC. We have the Facebook group, which is listed in the description below. Click that. I will add you. And we can continue the conversation there. But until next time, remember that the Transformers are forever. From the first time Optimus Prime tells them to roll out to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.